want you guys to open up this practice. And so we're talking about physical and chemical changes. So again, it tells us physical changes are changes in size, shape, or state of matter. No new substance is being formed when a physical change happens. We're just moving it around, changing how it looks. Chemical changes, however, is a change in the physical and chemical properties. So we're creating a new substance. Something new has been formed. We're not with the same things we started with. So because of that, let's take a look. We're going to do this first page more together, but do you guys remember any of the 6 signs of a chemical change? Any of those signs? I think they only gave you 4, so we're going to have to come up with 2 new ones. But what signs did you guys hear from that video that a chemical change happened? Starting to bubble. All right, I love it. We're going to change that a little bit. So starting to bubble. Is great when we're looking for it, and that's going to be that a gas is produced. All right, perfect. The color, there's a change in color. So this is what we're looking for here. There's a change in color. I think there was another one that somebody said. It starts to heat up. So we're going to say that there's a spontaneous change in temperature. So I'm going to write down that, and then we're going to talk about that one real quick. And I'm actually going to change this change in color one. I'm actually going to put spontaneous in the front of that one as well. And so that's going to be because, do you guys know what the word spontaneous means? Does anybody know what the word spontaneous means? Anybody have any ideas as to what the word spontaneous means? Have you ever heard anybody call it the spontaneous person?
Amazing.
Amazing. Okay, that's close. So spontaneous means that it just like it happens randomly. It happens instantaneously. It happens right away. It's random. It wasn't planned. So it didn't look like that before. So when we're talking about spontaneous in chemistry class, we're going to be talking about it in terms of it was random or not how it started. And so when I'm talking about it here, when I'm talking about the word spontaneous change in color, it means that if I took something white and something purple, normally that would make a lighter purple kind of color. Well, if I took something white and purple and I put it together and it changed colors, but it changed colors, so now it's blue or it's orange. It's random. It's not how you thought it was going to look. If I take 2 clear liquids and I put them together and you see a blue substance appear, that's not how you thought it was going to go. You thought it was going to keep clear because the 2 things together were clear. When you saw that thing turn blue, you know a new color was formed. Same thing with the temperature. I'm putting 2 things together and all of a sudden my hand starts to get really hot. Or I put 2 things together and now my hand is getting really cold. Neither one of those things were heated up or cooled down beforehand. They were room temperature on their own. And then you put them together and it starts to get really hot or really cold. Can you think of anything that when you put the 2 things together, randomly it just starts to get really hot or really cold? Has anybody ever used hand warmers before?
Yes.
Yeah, so that reaction in there, the hand warmers or even ice packs, both of them are chemical reactions that are happening that cause the rapid or random change in temperature. So that's kind of what we're talking about for those. There are 3 more. Does anybody have any idea what those other 3 are going to be? Odor, perfect. So a change in odor or smell. Two more. I think those were the 4 that they kind of brushed up upon during the video. So we talked about how changing the state of matter doesn't affect the chemical change, only changing the state of matter. But if we produce a gas, so if we start with 2 liquids and a gas gets produced, then we have a change in a chemical change, not a physical change. But if we start with 2 liquids, we can also produce a solid. And when we produce a solid, we're going to produce a precipitate. All right, and when I say produce a precipitate, I mean that a solid was formed in a liquid. So you have 2 liquids, you mix them together, and then you see a solid, little particles floating around in that liquid now, showing you that a solid was made, or we made a precipitate. The last one, think about fireworks. Besides the color, what else do you see happen?
The explosion.
The explosion. Okay, so we're going to narrow it down a little bit. So we're going to say when energy is produced, because energy can mean lots of different things. So energy is produced. And when we talk about energy, we're talking about light, so that explosion, or sound. If you hear like a random pop, that's also something. Like if you hear random noises that wouldn't have been there without those 2 mixing, you know a reaction happened. When you see bright lights going on, you know a reaction was happening. These are going to be our 6 signs that something changed chemically, not just physically. So something new was made. All right. So we have 12 practice problems. I want you guys to write either P or C next to those 12. And then we'll go over them in, let's say 3 minutes. Try and get as many as you can done in 3 minutes. Take your guess as to if they're physical or chemical. All right, guys, we are going to use the chat for this one because I want as many people to tell me what they wrote down as possible. So that first one, NaCl, table salt, dissolved in water. Is that a physical or a chemical change? Either type P or C. Send it in the chat. Keep sending your answers if you haven't already. I want like at least 3 more people to send it in. So if you haven't sent yours in, send it now. All right, at least one more person. All right. So based on what we wrote down, we have pretty much a mixed bag between people who thought physical and people who thought chemical. And this one was kind of the one I thought that was going to be the hardest to figure out. And that's because when you put the salt with table salt in water, it does dissolve. It kind of looks like it went away. So now water is all alone. So that's pretty hard to think about because now it just looks like water. But when you take the water back out, so if you evaporate the water, you heat that water back up, you let it dry out in the sun, what you'll find out is that salt will come back. So dissolving something does not change its form, it doesn't change its substance. So no new substance is going to be formed here. So this one is a physical change for this one because nothing new was formed. You still have water and you have salt. Now it's just they're sitting in the same spot. Just like if you wanted to go to the ocean and take the salt out of the ocean, you are more than able to do that as long as you take a bucket, you evaporate the water, you'll have a bunch of salt left. All right, number 2, let's try again. Silver, Ag, is tarnished, so it changes colors by reacting with oxygen. Physical or chemical? It's okay if you got it wrong last time, try again this time. All right, the overwhelming majority of people did say it was a chemical change, and that one would be correct on this one. So it's a chemical change, and that's because of the color changes, or even if you looked at the word just reacting with oxygen, if it's reacting, it's changing colors. What happens when silver tarnishes is there's like brown spots that come on it. So that's going to be a chemical change. So the silver is changing chemically for that one. What about number 3? An apple is cut. Physical or chemical change here? Take your best guess. All right. Every single person did get it correct. Physical change for that one. You're just changing what it looks like. What about heating changes water to steam? So if you heat up water so it turns into steam. What do we think? Physical or chemical? Couple answers. Look at a couple more. All right. Again, I think we're kind of split right down the middle for this one. And so the big thing that I think is going to be the issue here is steam is just the gaseous form. So it's just the gas of water. So it's just the gas form of water, which means that if we're heating it up, we're turning a liquid into a gas. So if we're turning a liquid into a gas, we're just changing its state of matter, which means it is going to be a physical change. The next one, baking soda reacts to vinegar. What do we think, physical or chemical? All right, everybody that sent an answer was correct. It is a chemical change. It's reacting with vinegar. It's what they make paper mache volcanoes out of, if you're wondering. But that is a reaction. Lead nitrate is dropped into potassium iodide, causing a yellow cloud-like substance to form in a clear liquid. What do we think, physical or chemical? All right, the majority of people who answered did say chemical, and they would be correct because we form this yellow cloud-like substance. So this part right here, that's going to be our precipitate. So a cloud-like substance is going to be our precipitate, which means it's going to be a chemical change. All right, what about if alcohol evaporates? What do we think, physical or chemical? All right, for this one, the majority of people who said physical change were going to be correct on this one, and that's because of the evaporates part means that it's going from liquid to gas. It's just changing its state of matter, so it's going to be a physical change. What about magnesium and oxygen react, causing a bright light to appear? Physical or chemical? All right, 100% of those answers were correct. It is a chemical change. That bright light coming out, that we see that bright light tells us the chemical change happened. What about if milk sours? What do we think for that one? Physical or chemical? Again, 100% of the answers I got were correct. This is a chemical change. We're changing its odor. We're changing the smell. So it's going to be one of those chemical changes. So when milk goes bad, it sours and it turns into a different thing. Pancakes cook. What do we think? Physical or chemical change? All right, this one was a little bit trickier again, because when we're cooking something, we're heating it up. We're going to heat it up, which is fine because that's part of the physical process. But when we heat it up, it's reacting. The things inside the pancake mix react together to create something new. And they're kind of heating up, they're burning almost, which means it's going to actually be a chemical change here. So when we cook things, we're changing things chemically. All right, what about the next one? Hydrogen peroxide decomposes and produces oxygen gas. So it decomposes or breaks down. Hydrogen peroxide might be the thing you might pour on cuts before you to clean them. Physical or chemical? All right, 100% of those answers I got were correct. It is a chemical change. It produces that gas. It's producing a gas, meaning it's going to react chemically. What about a paper towel absorbing water? Do we think that's a physical or chemical change? All right, this one, the majority of people did get this one right too. When the paper towel absorbs the water, the paper towel still exists, the water still exists. They're not combining to form a new product, because you can wring them out and separate them again at the end. So if you can separate them and turn them back into what they were before, it's going to be a physical change. So when you're doing these, I want you guys to make sure you're following this stuff right up here. You're looking back here, you're looking at it. And then as you go through, determine if it's physical or chemical. And this time you do have to explain why for part B, or sorry, for part A. And part B is just true or false. Are these people correct when they're saying this